Okay, Mary, it seems to be time. Let's go ahead and call this Board of Harbor Commissioners meeting for November the 18th to order.
Frank Kelly.
Present.
Betsy Kramer. Will Anakushin. Corey Bantalan. Absent. Eric Friedman. Here. Jim Sloan. Here. Bill Spicer.
Mr. Briley, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, no changes this evening.
All right. This would be the time when we would take public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. I don't see anybody rushing up. Moves us over to the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes from October the 21st?
I'll move. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That passed, and it's the department update.
Just one.
Oh, go ahead. Understood. You weren't here. You were catching fish. Okay, the department update.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any under the director's report. I'll cover a few things under commission and staff communications at the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Excuse me, business services then report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm pleased to announce that Patrick Henry has been appointed to the Waterfront Department's Property Management Specialist position. For many folks, Pat needs no introduction, as he has been a familiar face at the Harbor Operations Assistant at the Harbor Patrol Office for just over 12 years now, so many of you may know him from that. Pat brings a wealth of experience to the property management program, having managed marina rentals, rent collection, and rental contract compliance for many years for the Harbor Operations Division. Pat's duties as property management specialist include administration of the landside leases and on Stearns Wharf as well, overseeing the department's rental properties and the business activity permit program. He will also assist accounting staff with revenue control. He'll be in charge of insurance compliance and, of course, timely collection of rents and fees. Pat's hit the ground running. He's currently advertising the office space in the Marine Center building as available for lease, and the RFP was issued today and yesterday, so that's all in progress. So we'd like you to join staff in welcoming Pat to his new position with the Waterfront Department. He can be reached at 897-1961 with any questions relating to property-related matters or business activity permits. And Pat's here on my right. If you have anything you'd like to add, go right ahead, Pat.
Thank you, Scott, for the great introduction. I look forward to continue working with the harbor tenants and the Stearns Wharf merchants. Recently, I worked with Scott here and the Stearns Wharf merchants to help bring out movie night to Stearns Wharf. And as you know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off was quite a hit out there. And right now I'm working with the Conway Winery to facilitate the Parade of Lights reception and for the judges and their honored guests. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And on a related topic, moving on to upcoming lease expirations, the department manages 9 agreements that will expire in calendar year 2011, including Harbor Marine Works, Blue Water Hunter, Seacoast Yacht Sales, and Coastal Treasures on Stearns Wharf, all of which expire at the end of February. The store at Brophy's, which is their retail store, expires in July. Madame Rosinka out on Stearns Wharf expires in September. Sushi Go-Go in November, and the Chandlery offices in the Chandlery building at 132 Harbor Way we spoke about last month. Those expire in November, and we'll be working on an RFP and a lease for that location, as well as the NOAA Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary offices in the Waterfront Center building, which expire in December. So that's just a quick rundown of some of the projects that Patrick and myself will be working on in the upcoming months. And moving on to the holiday theme, for the 3rd consecutive year, the department is working with the Stearns Wharf Business Association to bring a 30-foot tall Christmas tree out to the shoreward finger of the wharf, which is the open area adjacent to the Ty Warner Sea Center there. It should be easily visible from Cabrillo Boulevard and the foot of State Street. The Wharf Association once again voted to pay for the tree, and the department facilitated ordering it and will take care of the lighting and the decorating of the tree. Oliver Holt Christmas Trees, for the second year in a row, will provide the tree. They'll deliver it on November 28th and install it using a crane service that they contract with, and the tree will be on display through January 4th. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Scott from the Commission? Commissioner Spicer.
First, congratulations to Patrick. And Scott, I just had one quick question on the Channel Islands. They're building a new building. Are they going to stay as a tenant? Do we know?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Spicer, I've had a lot of conversations with Todd Jacobs at the sanctuary. They do want to maintain a presence in the harbor because the shearwater will continue to be berthed here. So although they are building some new rental space out at UCSB, they do want to maintain an office presence in the harbor. So they're going to downsize, and they're looking at any offices that will be coming up for lease, or they may stay in part of what they occupy right now.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Anakuchin.
Yes, I have a question as to whether the position that Mr. Henry is vacating to his new position, will that be filled, or are you terminating that position?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Anakuchin, no, it's a position which is integral to the marina operation, so we will be filling that position. It's currently being recruited for now. We need that front counter staff person.
All right. Any further comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Patrick. And welcome to a new position.
Thank you very much.
Harbor Projects Facilities Management Report.
Good evening, Chairman Kelly and Commissioners. Thousands of vessels tie up to the accommodation dock every year, and at 15 years of age, it's in desperate need of an upgrade, I should say. Staff had considered several different options for upgrading it, and in February of 2009, we actually mocked up a 20-foot extension of the accommodation dock to gauge the impact to boaters in that area. That's a turning basin between the city pier and Marina One. Is commonly used by very, very many boats. Based on the feedback we got from commercial fishermen and several recreational vessels, staff decided that a 15-foot extension of the dock would achieve our project objectives to accommodate larger vessels while still allowing adequate water space for maneuverability in that area. The improvements include extending the dock 15 feet, as mentioned, widening it from 6 to 8 feet, and adding a concrete pile at the very end. The project was recently put out to bid, with Shock Construction Company submitting a low bid of $84,200. This project was included in our capital improvement plan for last year for $50,000. And the cost estimate did not include the concrete pile at the end, and that's why the bids came in a little bit higher than we originally anticipated. As we went through our design, we determined that adding a pile was beneficial for structural reasons, and also it increases the size of vessels that could tie up to this berth in inclement weather. We don't normally allow vessels to stay there very long, but under certain circumstances, it would be nice to have that added berth space, especially when we go through future construction phases in Marina One. Shock will begin construction along with another project in December, so you'll see quite a bit of activity there starting next month. And over in Marina 3, we have another dock widening project that we're going to take on at the same time. In March 2009, we were awarded a $50,000 boating infrastructure grant, which is a grant that's administered by the California Department of Boating and Waterways, specifically to improve transient berthing in marinas throughout the country, not just California. Marina 3 is our Americans with Disabilities Act compliant marina. Every harbor needs to have a compliant marina, and Marina 3 is ours. It has a switchback gangway and about 11 slips that are dedicated to any vessel where we might have a disabled boater if necessary. The 64-foot long end tie at 3B is our largest ADA compliant dock and one of our largest transient ADA compliant dock. So staff has designed another improvement there to widen that dock from 4 feet to 8 feet. It will create a much more stable platform for offloading and loading passengers, especially for disabled persons. This project was also bid out at the same time as the accommodation dock, with Shock being the low bidder at the amount of $31,000. This was also included in last year's capital improvement program. It was actually funded for $100,000 in anticipation of $50,000 from the boating infrastructure grant and $50,000 in matching funds of our own. Fortunately, bids came in low. It's a simpler project than we anticipated, so there'll be considerable savings there, and it'll all be paid for out of the grant. Once again, construction will happen concurrently with the accommodation dock. We'll begin in December. Dock shouldn't be out of service for more than a few days. They'll be built off-site, both of them floated in, and hopefully we'll just stay up and running. And this concludes my report this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carl. Are there any comments or further questions for Carl from the Commission? Commissioner Sloan.
I just had one question, Carl. What size what's the biggest vessel that the new accommodations dock will be able to handle?
Chairman Kelly, Commissioner Sloan, I believe it'll be a little over 80 feet that'll be actually on the dock itself. We frequently have boats overextend for a while. Right now it's a little about 65.
What's the largest transient we can handle?
175 feet at the RS Walkway, which is on Marina 1.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Any further comments or questions? Carl, thank you very much. I think that takes us to the Harbor Operations Report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Well, picking up on Carl's theme of grants, the Waterfront Department has also been fortunate enough to recently receive approval for 2 other Department of Boating and Waterway grants, both related to abandoned watercraft. One is one that many of you may be familiar with. It's let on an annual basis, and we've been awarded another $40,500 for abandoned watercraft abatement funds, and that is typically used for sunken or beached vessels, 90% of the cost of which is picked up by the state. The other 10% is picked up by the city, but make no mistake, we do our best, though not always successful, to retrieve the cost of those disposals from the responsible owners of those vessels. The other grant is related, but it's part of a new program that was enabled by legislation last year and initiated January 1st this year. It's part of what's called a vessel turn-in program. We received $8,000 for that grant, and that is basically aimed at individuals who wish to voluntarily surrender vessels to the city that would otherwise become abandoned or derelict, threatening the environment or becoming hazards to navigation. So the idea here is to pay $1 to save 10, and extrapolated, you can imagine how much that could save in the end if this program is successful. So the interesting thing about this program is there are only 5 or 6 harbors in the 5 or 6 jurisdictions in the state that applied for and received these grants. We are the southernmost, and according to the way this law was incorporated into California Boating Harbors and Navigation Code, it is up to the harbor administrators which vessels they take into this program. And so that being said, we will be concentrating our rather limited funds of $8,000 on our local jurisdiction, especially vessels east of Stearns Wharf or in that location that are in danger of dereliction or abandonment, and their owners wish to turn them in voluntarily. So we look forward to working with that program and with the Boating and Waterways Administration, because it's really a trial, a pilot program, if you will, statewide, and looking forward to helping them help it evolve. And with that, I would answer any questions. And that concludes my report. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mick. Didn't you want to cover the Parade of Lights?
My apologies. Focusing on the grant funds. Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was actually waiting for you to do that. No. I thought maybe you were sick of me announcing all our events, but in fact, I am thrilled that we have quite a celebration coming up on December 12th. It is, in fact, the 25th annual Parade of Lights, and it will be the usual route, but this year's theme, Winter Swell, Silver Bells and Winter Swells, is sure to bring out a lot of folks, both boaters and folks, spectators watching from the breakwater and Stearns Wharf. It will begin, of course, at 3 o'clock with the traditional Santa's Village on the city pier. This, I got to admit, has become one of my favorite, and I think one of the community's favorite parts of the entire day, where Santa arrives in a skiff and is greeted by hundreds of kids and their families and amid tons of snow from courtesy of the Fisherman's Ice Machine. And it's a lot of frolicking and fun and singing and music and good times with Santa, followed, of course, by the parade, which will begin at 5:30. And the parade this year will be followed by the typical awards party, but unlike the last few years, the awards party won't be held at the Waterfront Center building at either the Maritime Museum or Chuck's Waterfront Grill and Le Summer Bar Cafe. It will be held at the Carriage Museum, the Western Arts and Carriage Museum on Cabrillo Boulevard. Folks can walk there, quite frankly, from the parade site, from the harbor area, or they can drive. It's a very, very short drive. And, of course, that will be immediately following the 5-minute fireworks display that officially ends the parade. And with that, I would conclude my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Kramer.
Mick, one question. Given the strange weather we've been having lately, what happens if it rains?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kramer, if it only rains a little, it's business as usual. If it comes down in buckets, we have an alternative plan to judge the boats in their slips. And what we would do, we would escort the judges around in a harbor patrol boat, judge the contestants in their slips, and then continue with the party as planned afterward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spicer.
Mick, one question on the vessel turn-in. Is this an inaugural program for us, or have we done this before?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Spicer, this is an inaugural program. It's an inaugural program for the state overall. And so it's a sort of see-as-you-go kind of program. I was on the phone last week with the director of the program at the Department of Boating and Waterways, and she's actually working with the various grant recipients to work out arrangements on which boats they pick and how to deal with boats in jurisdictions that are far away from the grantee agencies, to deal with how we're going to draw them into the program and draw their local jurisdictions into the program. So it's a work in progress that we're working with the state to kind of see how it goes, pilot project.
All right. Any further comments or questions for Mick? Thank you very much, Mick. New business, Mary.
Assignment of lease agreement number 2642, Paddle Sports of Santa Barbara. Recommendation that Harbor Commission recommend approval to City Council for the assignment of lease agreement number 2642 from Paddle Sports of Santa Barbara, Inc. to Channel Islands Outfitters, Inc. for the 956-square-foot retail store at 117B Harbor Way.
And I do know we have some people that want to speak on this issue, but I like to go ahead and take staff's report, and then we'll have the speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Hyatt has leased the Paddle Sports store at 117B Harbor Way since July 2002, following a competitive request for proposal process, which he was awarded at that time. The current lease expires in May of 2012. The base rent for Paddle Sports is currently $2,600 per month. It's about $2.74 a square foot. The base rent is subject, like most leases, to an annual cost of living increase based on the changes in the consumer price index. The lease contains 4 categories of percentage rent, ranging from 1% and 2% up to 5 and 10%. 1%, for instance, for fees collected for organizing kayak trips, 5% for sales of your bigger ticket items, such as, low margin items such as kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, and kayak accessories. And the 5% category accounts for about 34% of the business's sales in 2009. And the 10% category covers rentals such as kayak and stand-up paddleboard rentals, books, lots of clothing items, and most retail merchandise. And this accounted for in 2009 about 64% of the tenants' sales. So those two categories account for almost 98% of what they're doing over there. In October, Mark Hyatt requested to assign the Paddle Sports lease to 3 of his managers and employees, Garrett Kababik, Fraser Kersey, and Johnny Dresser, who have formed the corporation Channel Islands Outfitters and doing business as Paddle Sports of Santa Barbara. So they want to retain that Paddle Sports of Santa Barbara name and name recognition that Mr. Hyatt's been building up over the years. The department has received the credit check, $3,000 lease assignment review fee, financial information on the new corporation, business plan, and resumes from the new owners, from the 3 new owners. Paddle Sports is considered to be in good standing with the department for the purposes of a lease assignment. They have no uncured default notices on file, and they've always been prompt with the rent and percentage rent payments. The business was audited successfully in July of 2009 as well, and in accordance with the department's lease assignment program and procedure, no changes to the business terms will occur as part of the lease assignment. The term won't be extended or the rent changed or anything. It's simply an assignment of the existing contract. And Garrett, Fraser, and Johnny are here tonight in support of the transaction, and they may wish to address the commission. That concludes my portion of the report. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Does anyone have a question for Scott before we take comment? Then Fraser Kersey and Garrett Kababek.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Commissioner Kelly and everybody here. And we're very excited to take over. And we've been working for Paddle Sports for about 8. I've been working there for about 8 years, and Fraser's worked there for about 5. And Mark offered the business to us, and we plan on keeping all of the good things that Paddle Sports has been doing, and hope to do a lot of really nice things with the community. We're going to do some after-school programs down in the harbor with some kayaking programs, and yeah, we're really excited.
We formed Channel Islands Outfitters to acquire Paddle Sports, but also to start building an education campaign with school programs throughout the country. So that's going to be our focus coming up the next few years here. And it's nice to meet all of you, and I look forward to serving the community.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions from the commission to Scott? All right. We do have a motion before us. We do have a recommendation. Is there a motion? Yes. Okay. Commissioner Sloan, is that did you make the motion on that? I mean Spicer? Yes. Okay. And there's a second on that. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the recommendation as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Welcome aboard, gentlemen. So we're off to item number 6.
Assignment of lease agreement number 2108, Minnow Cafe. Recommendation that Harbor Commission recommend approval to City Council for the assignment of lease agreement number 2108, the Minnow Cafe, from Jeff Jones to Brophy & Sons, Inc. for the 462-square-foot cafe at 117 E Harbor Way.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it's been some time since we've had a lease assignment request, and tonight somehow we have 2. So Jeff Jones has leased the Minnow Cafe location on Harbor Way since 1989. He's been working hard at it for over 20 years. The current lease expired in March of 2008, and the tenant has occupied the space on a month-to-month basis, which is referred to as a holdover status since that time. The base rent averages $2,174 per month. Again, it's subject to annual cost of living increases based on changes in the consumer price index. But the base rent is also allocated seasonally, like many of our restaurant and other tenants, to allow for a lower base rent in the slower winter months and a higher base rent in the more active summer months. The percentage rent is higher than some of our larger restaurants that run 10% of gross sales. In this case, the percentage rent is 11.4% of gross sales, which is consistent with other smaller fast food type restaurant concessions, including Char West on Stearns Wharf, Sushi Go-Go in the harbor, and Shoreline Beach Cafe over at Ledbetter, which all pay 11.4% of gross. The permitted use under the existing lease allow the tenant to serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner, although Mr. Jones has always concentrated on breakfast and lunch. And the permitted uses also permit the sale of beer and wine with the proper ABC license, but not, of course, distilled spirits. In October, Jeff requested the transfer of the Minnow Cafe lease to Brophy and Sons, Inc., Brophy Brothers Restaurant. The department has received the required documents, the $3,000 lease assignment review fee, which is consistent in all of our leases, a business plan, and other documentation relative to the transaction, to the assignment. Jeff is considered a tenant in good standing by the department, as he has no outstanding default notices on file, and he's always been prompt with his rent payments. The last audit was in 2006, and the Minnow is currently being audited. The audit will need to be successfully completed prior to forwarding the Commission's recommendation to Council for final approval, and that's in progress right now as we speak. Brophy's plans to continue to operate the business primarily as a takeout establishment, serving breakfast and lunch items, continuing with the famous breakfast burritos, but also bringing in some new items, deli sandwiches, fish and chips, continue with the burgers, and then, of course, Brophy's clam chowder will be available at the location. Brophy's also plans to extend the hours of operation, though, and add some dinner items as well to expand the business, and also begin accepting debit and credit cards for payment at the location, which has been a priority for the department for some time. Currently, it's a cash-only business. Based on Brophy's qualification and experience in the restaurant food service business, staff is recommending approval of this lease assignment request. And there's an additional factor that comes into play here involving the county health department. They've recently required the relocation of some refrigeration equipment within the space, and also the addition of a mop sink to the Minnow Cafe operation, which the current tenant is simply unable to comply with due to space constraints. If I'm sure you've all been in the Minnow Cafe and are well aware of the space constraints. We've looked at different areas. A mop sink could be located under the stairs by Brophy's at the 119 building, in the alley behind the Minnow Cafe, and they all have, they're all problematic solutions. So in this case, Brophy's is uniquely qualified to fulfill that health department issue, since their prep room is immediately adjacent behind the wall to the Minnow Cafe. They can knock a hole in the wall, mop sinks right there, end the problem. So in accordance with the department's lease assignment procedure, again, no changes to the term or the rent or anything will occur as part of this lease assignment process. And John Bennett is here in support of the lease assignment, and he can certainly help me answer any questions that the Commission may have. And with that, I'll conclude the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Are there any comments or questions for staff on this lease assignment? Commissioner Sloan.
Yeah, Scott, since it's a holdover lease, by assigning it, would the lease be up for renewal, or how does that work?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sloan, you're absolutely right. It's a month-to-month holdover lease, and as I mentioned, we're not going to tack some term onto it as part of this process. Brophy's has a long-standing relationship with the Waterfront Department, and they have good faith that they'll be able to perform under the terms of the lease until such time as a reasonable amount of time has passed. We've been discussing a 1.5 to 2 year period, and if they have complied with all the conditions of the lease, which we have every expectation that they will, and then some, we will at that time negotiate a term lease with Brophy's to include the Minnow square footage.
All right. Are there any further comments or questions for Scott? Okay, we do have a assignment of lease. Do we have a motion for this? So moved. Is there a second? All right, Commissioner Anakuchin. Any further discussion? This is pretty straightforward. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. A short meeting tonight, Mr. Bradley. We're down to Commission staff communications at 29 minutes.
Mr. Chair, as I indicated at last month's meeting, we wanted to try and accomplish these two lease transfers, and I appreciate the Commission and all those who came forward here tonight. The goal was for business and I'm sure tax purposes that these get done before the end of the year. So we had talked about not having a meeting in December during the holidays, so we wanted to get these two completed, and I appreciate both the commission and business partners and interest in coming forward. So with that, we really aren't going to have a meeting scheduled for December. We'll notice that. We have a few items that can hold over until the January timeframe as tentative agenda items. And so from that standpoint, I'm going to say and wish everybody happy holidays at this point.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. 30 minutes, Mary.